Ah, right on time. All right, little monkey. Okay. Yeah, coming out. Oh, not too bad. Oh, I'm not darling. It's not that bad. You're going to be more comfortable in there than you are in here. Okay, okay. Oh, especially
Look
up
at that
here.
top.
Rugby top. Okay. Oh, you're going to kill mummy's arm, aren't you? Oh, okay, okay, okay. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. All right. After lots of technical difficulties. All right. This is just not going to work, is it? Andy? Andy? There we go. You're so sleepy. You're so sleepy. Okay. Right. So, let's just do some introductions. So obviously I know you as Emily. Introduce yourself, introduce your little man.
So I'm Emily, I'm 35 and I am a paediatric speech and language therapist by trade. Not currently though, I'm on maternity leave with little Patrick. So Patrick's now 4 months, almost 5.
Oh my goodness. He actually looks bigger every time.
I know.
Like even from the last time I saw him.
Oh,
Yeah, Patrick's just overcoming a little bit of a cold, isn't he? Poor little Alfie last time was overcoming a cold too.
it's part of the trend of podcasts, isn't it?
Yeah.
But he's getting much better. He's not as whinchy, which is nice.
Oh, you don't winch. That typical thing. It's like, yes, he does.
Just very public.
Oh, bless.
Saves it all for home.
So this is episode 2. Emily, I think you were actually the person who gave me the inspiration for this podcast. That was probably 3, 4, 5 weeks ago now, something like that.
Who knows at this point?
Yeah, well, literally, actually, what's the point? Because you should be asleep. Don't look at me. Oh, yeah. Not going to end well, is it? Yeah, so I think what happened was I put my birth story out there, and then you had messaged me saying, "Oh, I think it'd be a really nice idea actually to get other people on to discuss theirs." I don't think on the walks that we've discussed your birth story.
I feel like I've told so many people, who knows, but yeah.
Okay, well, this will be enough for me because
yeah.
I discuss lots and lots of them,
Yeah.
whoever really wants to tell me theirs. But I actually don't think I know yours, so this will be interesting. So, tell me about the lead up to your birth. How are you feeling, and did you have any preferences?
Yeah. So I was extremely anxious during the whole pregnancy. So Paddy's my first, but in probably about 6 months before I was pregnant with him, unfortunately I had a miscarriage, and it was a silent miscarriage, which I didn't know was a thing. But which was where sort of your body doesn't recognise that you've had a miscarriage, so we didn't find out till we went for our first scan. Um, so it was quite a shock, and I think that set me up for a lot of anxiety during pregnancy with him.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
so
Technical difficulties than this.
Um, so I was going for like private scans like every 2
Yeah.
weeks just to sort of for my own reassurance. And then on the back of that, I decided really early on that I wanted an elective C-section, just purely for that level of control. My personality, I need to have sort of have control over things anyway. And then given the anxiety, I think I just felt like that was the best option. And I actually felt, no one was particularly negative about it, but I felt like I had a lot of judgment because I'd made that choice.
Yeah.
There was a lot of, every time I saw someone, it would be like, are you still having a plan for a C-section? And I'm sort of a stubborn person where that anything that maybe just double down on, yes, that's what I'm doing it. But I remember one of the parents at the school I work at said, I told when I was discussing it with her, she was like, oh, but you're not going to be a real mum if you do that. And I was just like, this level of judgment is crazy.
Oh my God.
Crazy. But I think I knew it was the right decision for me. In terms of the medical team, they were absolutely fine about it. I mentioned it from day one. They were like, that's fine. As it progresses, you'll have to have a couple more meetings just to sort of make sure you're aware of the risks. as if I hadn't done all of the research in the
Yeah.
world. But they were actually really quite supportive. I was surprised how long they waited towards the end of the pregnancy before they actually started even having any birth preferences discussions. Because plot twist, that isn't what actually happened.
Oh my God.
I was 35 weeks. I had all my husband's family down visiting for the rugby.
Yeah.
We'd gone out into the city. They'd gone for a lovely walk. I woke up the next morning and I was like, oh my God, I wet myself, how embarrassing, pregnancy life.
Yeah.
And then as I rolled over, there was quite another big gush and I was like, ooh, that was a bit weird. I maybe go and get this checked out. So I left my husband. I was like, look, if there's any problems, like, just come down. There's no point of you coming, the whole family's here. There was like 18 of them down. So went to triage and yes, my waters had broke. So they'd said at the time there was a 50% chance he'd arrive that day, 50% chance they'd just send me home with antibiotics. I'd already had the C-section booked in. He was due on Christmas Day, but they'd booked the C-section for a few days earlier. He was also breech as well, so they were... yeah, I know. So they were like more than happy for it to be a C-section.
Mm-hmm.
So was in triage about 7:30 in the morning. Literally, other than the waters breaking, no other signs of labour at all. Tom, my husband, came and joined me about 8:30, and as he was arriving, there was like really what felt like minor period cramps.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, it's happening today. The staff were great initially. So the actual like doctors and the consultants were great, midwives. I'll get to that. But they were like, right, it's fine, we'll get you booked in, did all the consent for the emergency C-section. It was just a case of waiting for the theatres to become available. Then about 9 hours later, I was literally in like crippling agony. And I was like, oh my God, this is my first.
Yeah.
I'm being a wuss, but oh my God, let's get this C-section done immediately because I don't know how long I can cope with this pain.
Yeah.
I was having like 30-second really intense contractions every other 30 seconds.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, this just doesn't feel right. So I called the midwife over because we were just still in triage, and she was like, just relax, you're absolutely fine. You were only 1 centimetre dilated like an hour ago. It's your first baby. And I was like, could barely breathe. She's like, well, you can have a shower. And I was like, obviously just like anything. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, I spoke, was trying to get all like my jewellery out for the C-section, and like couldn't even cope with that. I could barely speak. So we stood in the shower, and there was just blood pouring out, and I was like, this doesn't feel right either. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what to be expecting.
And already being anxious yourself, like all of this is probably just
so
heightening everything.
So called the midwife back after I'd been in the shower. I was like, I've got quite a lot of blood. I really feel like I need to push. And she was like, no. You've been here like 3 hours. It's fine. I was like, please, can you just go and get the doctor to do it, like an
Examination. Yeah.
So she came. I couldn't even tolerate the exam. I was in so much pain. So they then went and got me gas and air. So that was the first bit of pain relief I'd had. And then she did the exam, and then as the midwife came back, she was like, go and get the consultant. And there wasn't like a massive stressy, but I could tell there was a change in the tone of how she'd spoke to the midwife. So the consultant came through, and she was just like, I've got my hand on his bum. So next thing, it was like sides of the bed up, everyone's alarms going off, like emergency obstetrics. I was just getting wheeled, and at this point I had like my first few puffs of gas and air, so I was just living my best life. So why is everyone stressing? It's fine. And it wasn't until I actually got wheeled into the delivery suite, I was like, oh, I'm not having a C-section, am I? And they were like, oh, maybe, we're just gonna see. But apparently to my husband, they were like, and literally half an hour later, he arrived. So I ended up having vaginal breech delivery, which is just the complete opposite to what I had planned.
Yeah. So, apart from gas and air, did you have anything else?
Literally nothing at all. It was just too quick. Like, apparently it's quite common with breech births.
So hold on, rewind. They didn't know he was going to be breech.
They knew he was going to be breech. That was just part of the reason they were so okay with me having a C-section. But it was just, he decided he was coming, and he was coming there and then. So by the time that she'd done the exam, it was just too late for a C-section anyway.
And in hindsight, are you... I don't want to say the word happy, because obviously it's not the way you wanted it to go, but I suppose, you know, you didn't then have, you didn't have a C-section, and I'll be interested actually the further along this podcast goes when I have C-section mums come in and discuss it.
Yeah.
Because it's I've never had a C-section, so I don't know the ins and outs and obviously what the recovery's like. But from what I have been told, the C-section process is obviously, I don't want to say easier because it's not easier, but it's a little bit let's say, I mean, you have to have pain relief, don't you?
Yeah.
So that you don't feel it happening. Yeah. But then afterwards, the recovery is harder. So I suppose in hindsight now, like, are you happier that maybe that's the way that it went?
I was thinking about that on the, like, when I was down, because I was like, if I have another, how would I feel about that? And I think I'd probably still consider the C-section option, again, just for that sense of control and the anxiety management. But I think the reason I wanted the C-section was because of the silent miscarriage. I'd sort of lost a bit of faith in my body that, like, it would tell me if something was wrong or that it could even do it. So it was positive in the sense that, well, the whole thing was positive actually. I remember just after I'd had him and we were just in like the delivery suite, we were left to one of the midwives, and she was like, "Would you want to get up and like have a shower or something?" And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm not going to be able to move because I'm mentally prepared for that recovery." And she was like, "Yeah, the bathroom's just there." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I think now knowing and speaking to the mums who have had C-sections and how hard that recovery can be, I have a much more positive view towards, well, I like calling it a natural birth, because that's what everyone kept saying to me when I wanted the C-section, a natural birth, but I was like...
It's really weird, isn't it? Because that's just what we hear, but yeah, I think I have seen people that get really upset when that term is used because,
I think as well, especially for, it didn't upset me because I was like, I'm having a C-section, whatever. But I think for those mums who wanted a vaginal birth and have ended up having a C-section, I think for me that would be more upsetting because it's like, well, that was your plan and it's so it's not natural now. I was like, obviously it's assisted. And I was talking to one of my friends during pregnancy about the C-section. I remember her saying, it's just because men don't like saying the word vagina. That's why it's C-section, not vaginal birth. Like people just aren't comfortable with saying vaginal. And I was like, it's probably true.
I suppose.
And I just think it's like being conscious of like how you're framing it, because I felt quite judged for the C-section. And I'm very conscious now when around people's like birth preferences, which is why I always call it preference, not birth plan. Because as I think you'll probably see from the podcast and as I've learned, you can have all of the plans in the world, but they're going to come how they want to come.
No, exactly.
But yeah, I think for me, in terms of the recovery, because I prepared for that, was obviously a much quicker and easier process because I was literally up and about. Bobbing around everywhere.
It's amazing though, isn't it? Like, just going back to your point when you said, she asked you to get up and have a shower. That exact same thing happened to me. Obviously, first time I didn't have an epidural, so I was like, even though I was scared to get up, I was in my head, I was like, I can get up, But the second time, I had the epidural, and then I was able to walk, and I'm still really confused about how that happened. Because I thought, gosh, you have an epidural, and then you're not walking for like 3 hours or something, but I just got up and I was pushing that epidural button, so I don't understand the science.
It's just, I think I've put a lot of faith in the sort of professionals. And I remember, like, it's all flashes because everything happened so quickly. But when I wheeled in, they asked me to transfer myself on from like the bed I was in to the delivery bed, and I was like, "What do you mean? No one's going to carry me onto this bed? I'm in labor." It's just like.
It's what you expect though, isn't it? From like what you see and just like it's really funny. I remember my husband's mum, she's quite young, so she had a baby, and like I think it was the next day she came over to like show us the baby, but she was like walking around like normal, and I was so like naive because I just thought, how are you walking? Like, shouldn't you be in bed? Like it was really confusing. Obviously now I know that each labour is so different, and some people can just deal with it easier than others, but both times I was totally convinced I wanted an elective section with him. They didn't talk me out of it, but I think when I went in to have like the discussion, as you said, when we sort of speak about, like they have to tell you the risks and everything. Obviously I wasn't privy to any of the risks. I didn't have any idea. And I imagine they are, I don't know what the statistics are, but like 1 in however many, and they have to tell you the statistics. But it is scary
It is, yeah.
to like hear those things.
I do think it is a cultural thing though, because I was obviously speaking to a lot of people about it during the pregnancy, and with some friends over from Australia, and they were like, it's just the done thing in Australia. Like everyone just has a C-section. Everyone's shocked if you don't have a C-section.
Yeah.
And I think it's partly like the healthcare preference in terms of like the NHS preference for it, and also just like the cultural thing. But yeah, I think for what could have been a very traumatic birth, it was actually quite positive. If it had taken a longer time and it wasn't like a 6 hour from start to finish, it might have been a different story.
Yeah.
But actually, considering I was so set, like everyone was just laughing and being like, of course, you were so adamant you were having a C-section, of course you haven't. So yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah.
You were just very excited to arrive, weren't you?
That's so funny. So then, what were your initial feelings when you went into labour then?
I was surprisingly calm, because I think because it happened so quickly, there wasn't really much time to start like panicking. I got like panicky regarding the pain, but
did that ramp up quite quickly for you?
Oh yeah, it was literally like 0 to 100 in with the space of an hour. Sorry.
It sounds very similar to mine as well, and I think, you know, it will be interesting when I do have like midwives and things come on the pod, because from our perspective, we are the ones living the pain. So how do you kind of explain that to somebody else who doesn't understand?
Yeah.
And we all have different pain thresholds.
Exactly. Like I have a really quite high pain threshold, which is why I was starting to get panicky, because I was like, if this is like early days and I'm in this much pain, I don't know, I'm going to be able to tolerate this. And it turns out he was like halfway out. So.
Yeah. See, I was like, I remember being like 1-2 centimeters and thinking, oh, if this is labour, like I can totally do this. Like, yeah, it's like a really bad period pain that comes and goes, and then like something happens, and it's no longer like it's manageable.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I knew that I have a really low pain threshold, so I knew like I wanted every available option given to me. But again, because mine was so quick, it just didn't happen. Yeah. And like I now know since, because I had like the birth debrief with him, that, you know, it's nobody's fault, but at the same time, like I should have been listened to maybe a little bit more, and not just assumed because I was a first time mum, and like the statistics say that first time mums at labour longer. Exactly. Like that's not the case for everyone.
Most mums I've spoken to, especially from like our parenting classes, everyone had relatively quick labours. Wow. And it's like, and most of them were early as well, which I always say you first usually like later, but actually the majority of our parenting class were early. Obviously he was 5 weeks early.
That's really interesting that they were all early.
Yeah, I know. Wow. But yeah, I think the whole experience with the medical team were amazing. I can't really fault them. It was just that first midwife who was quite patronising, and I'm like you said, like everyone has different pain thresholds. But if it's at the point where like someone can't speak, like probably take them a bit seriously. Then it all felt a bit more panicky because it was so quick. Whereas if they'd have been prepared for that, they'd probably be more relaxed. Well, not relaxed. Who's going with their religion up, but it wouldn't have been felt as urgent.
Since obviously speaking to all the mums and things and going through it myself, I'm convinced that I don't know what's going on. I don't know if he's teething or what, because he's just also because he's not doesn't have a dummy.
Yes, I was going to say well done for the no dummy.
That they like professionals, because they see it every day, they're almost like numb to it. And for a first time mum, like this is almost the scariest thing probably that any of us have ever gone through. So like we're living in this crazy scenario, whereas these people see it every day. So I think there's a real difference there, that like a divide that needs to be closed. And I don't know if more training needs to happen, or like some midwives just don't seem to enjoy their job anymore.
No, and I get it, because there's the pressures in the NHS. I used to work in the NHS and I left because it was just getting ridiculous. But yeah, I imagine there's a lot, especially in exercise and triage, where the ratios of like midwife to patient is higher than particularly like a labour ward, and they're expected to just sort of monitor it. Maybe there's a level of hope that everything's just going to be slow to make their lives easier, but I think taking into account that every birth is different, we can't just be relying on like, oh, it's your birth, so it's going to take a while. But especially because I was supposed to be getting a C-section anyway. Like even at that point, we were literally just waiting for a theatre to become available. It was just you were just too fast, weren't you?
I think a lot of it actually just comes down to like human compassion. Like the compassion I think is gone for a lot of them, and you can see it. You can see like I hate to say it, but I felt in my experience it was the older midwives.
Yeah.
But maybe they've been there a long time. They've been doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's actually, funnily enough, why I chose to have the student midwife in with me a second time. First time around, I was like, I didn't want anyone else in the room, like, unless absolutely necessary. Because in my mind, I was thinking, what if the student midwife does something wrong? And like, you know, oh wow, really going to town.
Well, I was, because I used to work in the NHS, I was like, yeah, and when I signed all the paperwork, I'd be like, have anyone in that you want, because I mean, it's like everything should be a learning experience, especially if you're like the teaching hospital. But because it was quite an uncommon experience to have like a natural, vaginal breech birth, I remember one point like, I looked up and there was probably about 18 people in the room, and then I started panicking because I was like, oh my god, something's going wrong. And they're like, no, it's just not very common, so everyone wants to come and have it. I was like, oh, okay. Hi everyone.
Oh my goodness.
And then we ended up staying in for a week just because he had jaundice, and so they were just monitoring that, which is lucky considering he was early. But they just kept popping their head, loads of random people just kept popping their heads in the room being like, hi, just checking in. I'm like, who are you? They're like, oh, we were in the delivery room. I'm like, cool, great.
I had that though as well. Like one moment everything's really calm, and then a split second later there's like 10 people in the room, and it's all really chaotic, and you're just a bit lying on the bed like, what's happening?
So I've requested one of the birth reflection chats. Not because I was concerned with anything. Like I said, I was really happy. Oh dear. I was really happy with how it was supported. Just because I'm nosy, and because it was so quick, I don't really think I got the chance to like understand everything that was going on. Not that I felt like I needed to be more informed, because it was happening. Like they were just helping us through it. But I think it'd just be interesting to see from their perspective.
I found mine really interesting because I thought that things happened and they didn't even happen. Like, and actually to this day, I don't know. Like, it probably is the case that what they've written is true. But that's not my recollection of events. And I don't know if it's because I was like in La La Land, like spaced out, or in paid, like blacked out, or. But I'm like, how much? It's like, are you're like, they're not writing it when it happens, so they're sort of doing it from their memory as well. Like I really, the first time around, because I was induced, I don't remember having the pessary. I could have sworn that I just had the 2 gels. And then when I went for the birth debrief, she was like, no, you had the pessary, and I was like, what? But then really weirdly, I had the pessary with him, and it was so painful. And I said to Cameron, like, I would have remembered that, like, first time around. So, like, I'm still not
unless you blocked it out.
I don't know, because that's the first point in an induction. So, like, I would have, and I'm not in pain at that point. So, I don't know what happened. But, so then what support did you have during your labour and at delivery? So, you obviously had Tom there.
God bless
Did you have, so you said actually you were quite happy for anyone to see.
We had literally everyone and anyone. So we had we had the like head consultant who was just literally overseeing it. He was just like stood next to.
Is that because he was breech?
Like, and it was like unexpected. And then they had the actual consultant who was like guiding us through. I ended up having a episiotomy, so a little snip just to just to get his head out.
Right.
But at that point I was like.
You do. Yeah, I know.
And I remember like. Even when I was like first like pregnant and looking at birth stories, I'm like, oh my god, that sounds horrendous. It must be so painful. But literally at that point, I was like, whatever.
Because you're already in so much pain that you just sort of think.
I found that the contractions were actually more painful than the actual birth itself. And I don't know whether it's because by that point I was like ODing on gas and air, and like the adrenaline was just like so through the roof. But I distinctly remember being in more pain during the contractions.
Oh, contractions are just...
They are just the worst. Absolutely the worst.
Like, there's no way. The way I describe them to Cameron is just like a really intense diarrhea pain. Like, that is... But like progressively getting worse. Like, that's the only way I can describe it.
And then there's like a beach ball coming out of you instead of a runny poo.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, exactly.
Gorgeous.
So did you find that because you... Did you find that because you were quite happy to have other people in the room, did that impact you at all, or were you sort of still quite chilled out when you
other
were
than
in there?
when I looked up and saw how many people there were, there was like initial like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And as soon as I got the reassurance, like, no, we're all just being nosy. I was like, fine, because then we were just head in the game, like, getting.
And did they all just leave after a while, or?
Yeah, like afterwards, and it was actually quite nice because it's like I had a huge team cheering me on as I was doing it. So I was like getting lots and lots of support, and I was like a bit like, this must just be like what a football player or like a rugby player feels like when we're cheering them. And then they were all hanging. So when he was born, he needed like half an hour of oxygen. So like he was just I could just see him from the end of the bed getting the oxygen. So I was like, but still sort of out of it. And
That must have been really scary as
yeah,
well.
and he was so little when he was born, and I remember just being constantly like, "Is he okay? Is he okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, like literally nothing to worry about." Like it was a quick birth. It was a bit of shock, it's just taking his lungs a bit longer to get aboard, and he was a bit early. But the staff were like really reassuring. I think Tom, God bless him, was a bit shocked because he was. I remember apparently when I rang him to be like, "Yeah, it's happening today." He'd gone for breakfast with the whole fam. And we're like, oh, she'll be out later in a bit. She's not going to have the baby a day. So I think he was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And then when we got rushed, he was just sort of like left to pick up the bags and follow us. And when we were doing our parenting classes, they had a lovely section for one of the sessions on like for the dads, preparing the dads for the birth. And I'm thinking like, how are you with blood? Like all of those sort of questions. So he was like, I'm not great with blood. I'm going to stay at one end. If I feel dizzy, I'll sit down because I'm not the important person. So apparently when I was in labour, I kept being like, is Tom okay? And he was like sat next to me and he was like, please just focus on me.
Oh, isn't that funny? That's so funny. I found that a second time around, because I chose to have a student midwife in there, it's the best decision for me because, and I now know, obviously I mentioned before that one of my best friends is a midwife. She said that why it's so good to have a student midwife in there is because I think it sounds wrong, but if they do something wrong, it's not like, I don't think it's the hospital's fault or something. Or basically what she meant was, she's going to kill me because I probably said that wrong. But it's like if the student midwife can sort of be really chilled and relaxed and be that person for you, almost like a bit of a doula, just like helping you talk through it, because they're there as like a learning thing. Whereas the other midwife there, who's sort of more in charge, she's the one that's doing everything, and if anything goes wrong, it's sort of done on her watch.
Exactly.
So I found that my student midwife, like I wouldn't have known she was a student midwife because she was, really informed and was great, and I actually found that she was calming my nerves more because she was just super chilled, and I felt like I was just chatting to a friend.
Yeah, and I think they have to sort of talk through what they're doing and explain and have an understanding of what they're doing, which I think helps slow down that process where, like, experience midwives like part of the process, let's just do this without thinking, where there's a bit more of like explanation around why and what's going on, which I think you need because it's such a...
But again, like, I don't know if it comes down to like, because they've not been doing it that long, but there's like that eagerness and that excitement, and they had the compassion, whereas like the ones who were maybe assessing her, I just felt like they were like, like this, that, and the other, like, just sort of like not that, like not that bothered. Whereas, it should. I know they see it every day, but like it's a really monumental moment for these people. Like,
absolutely.
I don't know. But,
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm all for student midwives now.
Absolutely.
So then, how did you feel immediately after giving birth, both physically and emotionally?
I think it took a good few weeks to like process it because he came early and unexpectedly and not to our birth preference.
Yeah.
There was just a level of like getting our head around that he was actually there. And because I think we had those 5 days in the hospital because of the jaundice, we were sort of in a safe bubble, and I was desperate to get out by day 5 because he was fine. It was literally just the jaundice, and he'd been under the lamp for like 24 hours, but then it was fine. There was like monitoring these, and I was like, can we not just go
like
home?
You can't start your life yet,
Yeah,
can you?
exactly.
Like, you're still in that like hospital bubble. Like, you're not sleeping. Who sleeps while in a hospital? And on top of that, you've got a baby to worry about.
Exactly.
Like, were you sleeping in the same room?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
And poor Tom was like sleeping on the floor the whole time because he was allowed to stay, which I think is great.
Yeah, I was going to say it's great he could stay.
But we were just in these same 4 walls for like 5 days. And I was like, I need to get home. I want to start.
Because like you can't take the baby out the hospital, can you? So.
But then I remember getting home that first day and then being like, oh my god, I don't just have a button I can press and loads of medical professionals
Yeah.
going to walk in.
I had exactly the same thing. Like you're desperate to get out of hospital, but then as soon as you get home, you're like that safety blanket
Yeah.
is gone, and you're very much just like left to it.
Like I'm responsible for this.
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah.
terrifying. And I think I had quite a tough time like the first few weeks after he was born. And I've suffered from depression in the past, so I was like, I caught the symptoms, and initially a lot of people were like, oh, it's just like the baby blues, and I was like, this feels a little bit more than that. And there was like, I was literally just could not stop crying at everything, and it was like intrusive thoughts like, oh my god, what happens if he dies? What happens if Tom dies? What happens if I die? And I would just literally be inconsolable. So I took myself to the doctors like really early on, like literally the day it was like 3 weeks, because that's when they stopped calling it baby blues and started taking it more seriously. And then they put me on antidepressants, and it was just a game changer. And part of it was I had like a very tumultuous time breastfeeding as well. So initially I wasn't great at latching. I was having loads of milk, but just he wasn't latching, he wasn't fussed, he had tongue tied, lots of things like that. And I found that when I was pumping, that's when I was having like these emotional breakdowns. So when I was discussing it with the doctor, when I went to chat about the postnatal depression, they were like, this could be part of the problem. Like, if you're going to breastfeed, keep breastfeeding, but consider it, is it worth how you're feeling? So I just felt like I was just like, I wasn't bonding with him because I was just so concerned about pumping and making sure he was fed. And he was combo fed from day one because of the jaundice. We had to give him bottle and formula and breast milk. So I stopped feeding about 8 weeks, and that in itself was a huge like change mental health wise as well. Like hormones started levels out, which is why I think I'm all for breastfeeding. I think we should absolutely try it, but if it doesn't work, there shouldn't be this pressure that like you have to keep going, because that was a huge thing. As soon as I stopped breastfeeding, I actually found I was bonding with it better because I could spend time not just being like a cow getting cooked for him. So yeah, in terms of mental health wise, it was hit and miss. But I think I made sure I got the help in early to make sure that I was getting the correct support, because we're from the northeast, if you haven't told my accent, and all of our family are up there. So in terms of like support around us, it was just, obviously everyone was lovely, like calls and things, but it was just me and Tom. And I think that was more difficult than we were anticipating as well. So just making sure I had that support around us as well. Like midwives were great, health visit was okay. But the actual GP was brilliant. Like I rang to get the emergency appointment, and I did a phone call appointment. It was a male doctor, and he was like, "Look, I think we should come in and have a chat. Like I'm more happy for you to give you some antidepressants, but I think you should come in and have a chat with us." I rang them so I could get a referral to counselling, and he was like, "I think you should come in." And that's when they were in. I was really impressed with the support on that side of things. But post birth, I was just like, "What just happened?"
Yeah. And then physically, because obviously mentally you're prepared to have affection, so then physically you're probably, I mean, I know you had the episiotomy,
but that was like a couple of stitches, and I was expecting that to be much more painful. I was like in shock of like how your body's just bounce back straight. I mean, I know it's not the same for everyone.
Because I was going to say, like, I've heard a lot more negative stories about episiotomies than I have.
Yeah. But I was shocked, and I think it's probably because I'd prepared for a C-section, so I was prepared for quite a difficult recovery. But I was just like, I can't believe I'm walking around.
Yeah, it's mad.
As if nothing happened. I'm going to put him down as well. It's sleeping.
You'll go down like one. It's a lot round. Good thing it moves. There we go. Yeah, I mean, I am very glad that I didn't have an episiotomy, only because I've heard so many negative stories about them. I tore for both of mine, but what I've read is that if you're going to tear, or if you need assistance, let's say, it's probably better to tear because your body tears in the place it naturally would.
Right.
Whereas an episiotomy, I don't know, they always go in the same spot.
Yeah.
But
I've got no idea.
But I had, obviously you don't feel yourself doing it. I'm assuming you had some sort of like pain relief before they.
No, I don't think they did. That's the thing. I need to have a bit. I don't feel like they did. Maybe they did. Who knows? But I think
Surely they'd have to.
by
no?
that point, I think because he came out bum first as well, there was like the wider part. It was just to get the like
Oh my
bit of the
God.
head out. So I don't know. I think they did it because they can't just like pull because it's his head and neck.
Yeah.
So they had to sort of give him a bit more space. But that's something. It's one of the reasons I'm looking forward to the reflection chat thing.
Yeah.
To just try and get an understanding. Like I said, I've got no fault with support about Juniper. It's just I'd like to know a bit more because it all.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're not even doing it from like a trauma
Yeah.
side, where it's what I did, it will be quite nice for you, I think, just
Yeah.
to get some clarity, I suppose. And for me, it was like I wanted to know why certain decisions were made
Yeah.
because I feel like, and we probably touched on this before, like when it's your first, you are going to trust the professionals that are there.
Yeah.
Because why would you not? They're
Yeah,
there to
absolutely.
do the best for you. So I very much just went with what
Yeah.
you know they were saying, and it's only in hindsight that I wish maybe I would have advocated for myself a little bit more and just know. And I felt very informed going in.
Yeah,
there.
and I also think because you're in a state, there is that state of like, this is a terrifying thing that's happened. I think regardless if it was your first or 10th baby, there is going to be an element of like, oh my god, this needs to go well. So what's your advice?
Yeah.
And it's whether it's just I suppose a bit of luck on the draw and the support that you do get through that.
Yeah.
But
don't you think that's like that in itself is such a shame? Like I feel like everyone should just give the same level of care.
Yeah.
Like don't go into an industry maybe where like you have to be caring.
Yeah.
And again, my midwife friend's probably going to kill me for saying that because she's like, you don't know the stress we're under. And I don't claim to know. You know, I imagine it's like.
But it's remembering that this is like one of the most important days in that person's life and could very much dictate how they view the pregnancies and best.
If they choose to have more, like
even in terms of like the miscarriage I had, I got friends who were in the northeast who also had a miscarriage, and the way it started with theirs completely different. So obviously we found out we lost the baby, and it was literally the next day we went in for the treatment. Whereas up in the northeast, they make them wait two weeks, and it's just that's how.
It's such made my stomach.
I know, and it's like I was gobsmacked when I heard that because it was like. I don't know why they do that, but that's just, and it's like that inconsistency in support and care and sort of lack of like understanding the impact that's going to have on someone.
It's like empathy. It's just like human empathy. Like again with the compassion thing, like it's somehow somewhere been lost along the line. And you know something that still baffles me to this day is I'm not sure it was the case. No, it definitely wasn't when my mum was born. But back in the day, don't ask me what era I'm talking about. But they would have a baby and they would stay in the hospital for like 2 weeks and like they would like get help and they could sleep and they were taught how to do this and that. Like, where is that?
Yeah, like if we hadn't gone to the parenting classes, I would have been utterly clueless on like how things. And then
I mean, we did NCT and didn't learn anything.
Yeah.
So
like we did it and took parts of it that like have been useful. We haven't like followed everything to the G, doing very much like what works for us as a family. But I know Tom in particular who was like terrified of babies prior to having one, wouldn't have had a clue what to do. And if that support isn't there in hospital, because there'll be some people who can't access parenting classes for whatever reason, like finance, work, whatever. Like where they learn that from. Yes, we have the internet now, but you can't always rely on that as a reliable source.
Exactly. It's just the level of care. Sadly, I just think. I mean, in my hospital, Cameron wasn't allowed to stay overnight, and apparently they used to be able to stay, and then people started to take like with it a little bit, and they said that they would walk in and like the dad would be on the bed and like mum was sort of standing up, or dad would be walking around like in their boxes and things, and it's just like why ruin it for like the collective? It's just
with
so
those people rather than for everyone. If Tom hadn't been with me in those sizes, I probably would have fully lost my mind.
All right. So then, has your perspective on childbirth changed after your experience?
Like I said, I don't know whether I think I'd still probably initially want to go for a C-section again with the second one, just because I was so anxious around it and that decision was taken out of my hands by him.
And they do say, like, again, I don't know the statistics behind this, but second time is quicker.
Yeah, well, that's what they said, and I was like, how would that humanly be possible? Because that was 6 hours, like.
Although, saying that, obviously, Buster was like 3 hours. and then I was induced for him, and it took way longer. But I got induced 2 weeks earlier with him than I did with Buster, so I think my body was just like ready for Buster. Whereas with him, he probably could have gone another. I mean, I'm glad he didn't because he was 9'4".
Yeah.
So I don't know what I would have been birthing then.
No.
I probably would have had a section.
Yeah.
I'd have a section. So.
But I think I'm more open to all aspects, and I think I have a lot more. I'm much more considerate when I'm discussing births with like pregnant people or other friends, because I know how sensitive and important it can be to someone, and distressing if it doesn't go to plan. Like luckily we had a really, really positive experience, even though it didn't go our way. But that's one advice I give to anyone who's pregnant is have a preference, not a plan, because I always say if you want something to happen, say out loud that you want the opposite, because then that'll probably what will happen.
I mean, one thing as well, which I think should happen earlier, and you mentioned this at the beginning, is that when you have those preference chats, or if you want a section, that chat doesn't happen until you're like 36 weeks, I
really
think.
late on.
And I just think like
I had the chat with them earlier because they knew he was breech and I knew I wanted it, but I had him at 35. We wouldn't have had that conversation if I hadn't forced it. It's just, it's...
I wonder what their like decisions, but like why they chose to do that. So like,
I know, especially because I was so set from early on, like literally from like the first midwife, I was like, I want to have a C-section. What do I need to do to make that happen? They were like, whoa, calm down, let's see. And I was like, that sort of did add a little bit of anxiety, because I was like, they're not going to let me have one, they're not going to let me have one. And it wasn't we did the Happy Parents, Happy Baby parent class, which I would highly recommend, they were brilliant. And the reason I went with that rather than the NCT is I've heard that NCT can be quite like set on like vaginal birth, breastfeeding, drilling it in, and I knew that wasn't, well, I wasn't sure I wanted. So, and they were brilliant. So it was run by a midwife, and she was saying, no, it's your birth. Like, if you want it, tell them that. And it was that reassurance that I was like, okay, why are they waiting so long to organise it? But it is still my choice. It was mad.
I mean, it's interesting though, because obviously you've said you've had a positive experience, and it's actually not what you wanted at all.
No.
So it's quite a nice way to show, I suppose, that even if it doesn't go to plan, it can still be really positive.
Absolutely. And I think it's quite an unusual one that it's the other way around. Like usually typical people want a vaginal birth and end up with a C-section. It's the other way around.
Yeah, and interesting that you would still possibly choose to have another section.
Yeah, but I think that's more from my like anxiety side of things than actually whatever the reasons. But we'd see, like they say, you can have all the plans in the world, but it's up to them how they want to go about and come into the world.
And just quickly, did they give you any reason as to why he came early?
They say it can be quite common with breech, but in terms of like why he came early, it was just like no.
Wow.
Like I was thinking, what was I doing? Like we went for quite a big walk the day before, like maybe that set up. But I was like no, and there was literally like the reason why I was like, oh, it's fine. I'm not gonna, around Tom, I was like, it's fine. It's probably not going to happen today. Because literally, when I went into triage, other than me thinking my waters were broken, there was literally no other signs of labour at all. And because I'd been so anxious throughout the pregnancy, I didn't really take many pictures of like the bump or anything. And luckily, the day before, Tom's sister's been like, no, you're fine. Like, let's get a picture. And so one of the only picture I really have of the bump is the day before you.
That's the universe's way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you've kind of already touched on this, but how do you feel about the healthcare professionals who assisted you?
Yeah.
So quite positive.
I think other than that, midwife, who again, she was fine.
Yeah.
But the overall support I had, given it was quite rushed, and the post care as well was really, really, really great.
Where did you have
West Mid.
Okay.
Like I literally can't fault them. Like that doctor who I saw from when I triage was with me right up until we went into the delivery, and she was incredible. She was really like calm, kept me felt really relaxed, really spoke through the process. And I think again it was just that midwife aspect of like we've seen this before, it's your first baby. So other than that, I couldn't really fault them. And even like the midwives when we were in the 5 days, they were like in and out every now and again, like having a really good chat. They had a really, really good breastfeeding team at West Mid as well. Like we spoke to them quite a lot because he was having trouble latching. And they were super supportive. They were like,
did they spot the tongue tie?
Yeah. As I did as well. Good speech
Yeah.
therapist. So I was like, he's not latching, it's his tongue.
Yeah.
But I think they were, because I was concerned that they were going to be like, okay, just because I did really want to try breastfeeding, and they were like, it's fine, like if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, like don't be putting the pressure, which I was shocked by because I was sort of assuming, and you hear the horror stories of like forcing you to do it, but they were super supportive like either way.
That's really good.
Which is, I think, helped a lot. It was not like the pressure I was putting myself was the issue, it wasn't coming from them, which is brilliant, so I really can't fault them. That's just my experience. Yeah.
No, well that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. So then, what advice would you give any expectant mothers based on your own experience?
Yeah, it would be have a preference, do not have a plan. And I think another really good thing from the parenting classes we went to is I did still have an idea of what to expect in if it was a vaginal birth, so I didn't go into the situation completely unaware. So yes, I was set on a C-section, but I made sure I was like the process was aware of the process for everything else. But I think that would have been terrifying because I wouldn't have prepared myself for it.
Yeah. What was Tom's views on it? Was he just like, whatever you want to do?
Yeah. He was like, literally, it's not my place to say anything because you're about to have a child. You're carrying a child. He was like, yeah, whatever works for you, which was great. Whether he actually in his privately had his own opinion at that time, but he was really supportive in terms of like, you're the one who's having the baby. It's not really my business.
I think it's interesting because obviously first time around, I think that's probably a lot of men's thought process.
Yeah.
But you know, I don't think Cameron would mind me saying, but because I was thinking about having a section for Bear, because we'd already gone through it first time with Busted, we both knew what the newborn stage was like, and I think he was really starting to panic, thinking, you know, you're going to be unable to help me. How is this going to work? And bear in mind we have another toddler, like, and then you can't get up with the toddler as well. So I think he was in a bit of panic mode, thinking, oh my god, like those first couple of weeks are going to be really difficult. And again, like in hindsight, I'm glad I didn't have the section because, you know, I don't have anywhere to touch wood, but I feel like touch wood, I seem to have pretty straightforward pregnancies and births, and I do feel like, especially second time around, I have been able to just bounce back a little bit. Whether that's because I have a toddler to care for as well. You know, I definitely didn't have that experience first time, but I don't know if I would have had that experience if I had the section because as I said, I'm really not good with pain, and I know myself and I know my body. Like I would think I've just been cut open. I don't even want to get up. Like how am I gonna do this? Like,
and I think that is something I would take into consideration is if we did have a second, because our family are up in the northeast, that would be a huge responsibility for Tom having to do everything.
You can't drive. Like for literally 6 weeks, I think it is.
And Tom was incredible after when he was born. Like he just threw himself in the deep end and helped with everything. But that would be very different if I was like their aunt. And I think he spoke a lot. Our neighbours, they have a 1-year-old who's coincidentally just born the year before, same day the year before Paddy. So I think he spoke a lot to our neighbour to find out like, how it was for him, because his partner had to have a C-section. So he was like gathering his own knowledge in his own ways, which I think is great. And I think the best way to do it is actually go and speak to people who've had it. Like you can look online, you can like read the books, but actually it's that lived experience that no one tells you about. And that's like where you can get the best tips from.
The hard thing is though, and don't you agree, like it's how honest to be with a pregnant person. And because we were the last to give birth to Buster in our NCT group, you know, and because I went 2 weeks over, I was saying to all the girls like, you know, please tell me like what does it feel like, what can I do, blah blah blah, and they were all just sort of like, oh, it's fine, like don't worry. And then afterwards I was like, guys, you know, why did you? And they were like, we're not gonna tell you, like, you know, and also you can't preempt what's gonna happen. So, you know, some of them had a really positive experience, and I unfortunately, like, it went south for me. But you know, I don't know if I would have wanted to have known that.
My
if it would have been helpful. I don't know.
A few pregnant friends at the moment, I just keep saying it is hard. Like it is hard, but it also gets better so quickly. Like you just adapt to it so quickly, and make sure if you are finding it super hard, ask for help. Like no one's going to be like, oh, they're not doing it. Like you need the help. Like it does take a village. It really does.
And like as you said, your village isn't around, so like that must have been super difficult.
It was tricky. Like I've got my friends around here, but there's also a level of like you don't want to be like bothering people with a newborn.
And also like it's 3 a.m.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
you want your mum, or you want
Exactly.
like your sister or
And that's
whoever.
another benefit of the parenting classes. Like I would advise to anyone, even if you have got like your friends and family around, join those classes, because we've got a really lovely network of with like we missed a reunion yesterday because he wasn't very well, but like we regularly meet up. The girls meet up every Wednesday for like the walks, or if not a walk, or for a lunch, and we've got our chat. So like Tom had the dad's chat and all the we had the mums, and it's like those 3 o'clock in the mornings. There's like an advert on TV 3 months ago.
Yeah, I've seen
But
it.
that's like a real thing. Like you just drop a message of being like arg, and
Yeah.
having someone back saying I'm with you
Yeah.
makes a world of difference, because it can, those night can get lonely
Yeah.
when you're just sat there losing your mind with a baby.
Yeah.
But having that support, even if it is just via text, is a huge thing. Really important to do.
It's just, I wish that there were more free services like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I guess that's why I sort of started Twitter Mums, really, for it to be free, because as I said, we did NCT, and I don't regret doing it. It was really expensive, but I would not have gone through Buster's first year without those women. And yeah, I think I was just a bit nervous going through it second time, thinking I don't have people who are at the same stage as me, and that was quite difficult. So.
Yeah, and I think that's was the first. There needs to be sort of like that second baby.
Yeah, there is,
really?
but it's still like 200 and something pounds on NCT.
Yeah.
So I had to really say to myself, like, what am I paying for? Like, is it just, I just want the friend.
Yeah,
I know everything else. Like, they call it like a refresher course. It's like, well, for me, I don't need to be refreshed that much because it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
But, you know, I suppose maybe if you've got a massive age gap, it might be worth it. I just wanted the friend.
Yes.
You know, and not everyone, like, obviously, I think we were both lucky that we got on with our group, but you might not get a good group. Like, and I've heard that, you know, you might have a really young mum and there's like quite like slightly older mums, and you just aren't really at the same.
And like I sent you that pushy message because Twitter Mums has been amazing. Just because again we don't have that village around us. All my friends are still working and or don't have babies, so it's difficult to like. I mean, don't get me wrong, we still take them to the pub and things, but like you sometimes just need that mum space. And I think what's great about Twitter Mums as well is you're meeting mums of like babies of all different ages. So you have your parenting class mums who are like going through the same thing time wise, but you can also have those chats with like mums who just had babies or ones who've got like 9-year-olds, and it's really good having that mix of the ages.
I think so as well. Like even like to the mums that bring toddlers, you know, it's harder for them. I get it, and I take my hats off to anyone who brings a toddler. But even for me, like, you know, Buster's nearly 2.5, and you know, I'm very much living the 2.5 in that world. But I couldn't remember what it was like to have a little newborn, and to be able to like, you know, have conversations with other mums. I'm like, oh my god, like about the 4-month sleep regression. I completely forgot that it even affects their daytime naps. I think you might have been the one actually to remind me of that the other day, because I've been like dreading the night times, and every time I hear something, I get this like pang of anxiety, thinking, oh my god, it's happening. But you know, I completely forgot that it even happened to their day naps as well.
I find the day naps not happening harder somewhat than the nights, because I've sort of got used to not having like a full night's sleep. Whereas not having like half an hour to get something done because he's put down and then 10 minutes later he's up. I initially found that more exhausting because I was like, I am not getting anything done. And then I had to remind myself, like, you don't have to get everything done. It will get done at some point. And especially because he's now more like interactive and less of just a potato, a baby. You want to spend that time with him, like the housework will get done at some point. I want to be like chatting with him and laughing with him when he's up.
And the thing, and I have to remind myself this because, you know, this is my second time going through it, is that it is all a phase. And like, even in like those depths of despair of those nights where you're like, I'm going to die if I don't have some sleep, it does get better, and it's all a phase. They'll come out of it, then you get hit with the next one and you go through the same process, and that sort of like continues. And then, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just lucky with Buster, but I feel like we've sort of had all of the regressions, hopefully. And like, it's just, we haven't hit the two-year one, so I don't want to say it into the universe, but but you know,
it's all a phase.
It is all a phase, and well,
they're great. They are great.
They are.
I'd highly recommend it.
And you definitely are thinking that you want a second?
Yes, we've said maximum 2. I was an only child for like 23 years, but I'd remarried and I've got 2 siblings. But Tom's one of 4, and joining his huge family and my stepfamily are huge as well. Like, I absolutely want to have Paddy to have that experience. I don't regret being an only child. I loved it. It was great. But you're not that missed out, but I love having that huge family
Yeah.
around us, and I'd like him to.
Yeah. And me and Cameron always talk about this, like, it's hard in the early years, but we're just like thinking about the future.
Yeah.
And, you know, when they're like slightly older and you have like crazy Christmases with like loads of kids running around,
Yeah.
like, we're very much just in that baby stage at the moment. And it's like, you're just surviving,
Yeah.
just getting through, you know, but then 10 years will go by.
Exactly, and they're going to entertain
Yeah,
themselves.
exactly. And you get like a little bit of your time back then, I think. Like, I even found that with Buster. Like, he, yeah, I found that we got a little bit of our life back, and then, you know,
Yeah.
it goes back to newborn nights.
Yeah.
But, you know,
We make it work. I think that's another thing as well. Like, I was conscious that I wanted to be a calm parent. Lovely idea. But like all my friends who have been chill parents, they have had chill babies. So I was like, I'm going to try and make a conscious. And I'm not in all areas because it's just physically impossible. But we've definitely made sure that he sort of like fits into our life. We haven't just like gave up everything. And especially because it is just the two of us down here, it's really important that we're still getting that social side. So he comes to the pub, he goes into the city with us for dinners with people.
Oh, I love that for you.
Like we've just forced it upon him, and he's luckily, we are very aware that we've got very, currently, chilled baby.
Yeah.
That could change literally even tonight, but we're taking advantage of that when we can because it's important. But because I found part of the postnatal depression, it was immediate loss of my own identity. Like my time's not mine anymore. Like I can't just do things I enjoy. Like I had to stop my work, which I'm really passionate about, and that's what I really struggled with initially. And then actually it was like, hang on, he's sound. He can just come along with us and like fit in with it. And that's not always the case, but I think it's still like you did that post about making sure in the morning you've got a bit of your routine in, and that's like really important.
Because I didn't have that with Buster. And, you know, I'll be 100% honest with you. Like, I love that that's your lifestyle, and I am envious of that. But I just couldn't do that personally. Like, I need structure and routine.
Yeah.
So the thought of taking him out, and I think we may have done it with Buster because he was a very chill baby, like Paddy.
Yeah.
We couldn't do that with him.
Yeah.
Like, and I would just be on high alert. I'd be like, you know, he's gonna cause a scene, and there's gonna be loads of people, and they're, you know, and it's annoying because I don't want to be like that.
Yeah, it is very much dependent on the baby.
I know that like he needs a schedule and I need a schedule, and you know, this is probably going to bite me in the bum later because he's not slept for as long as he needs to.
Yeah.
But you know, on days like today, I have to just persevere through it.
Yeah.
Like I'm learning every day to just chill out a little bit more. Like Cameron's like, it's fine. I'm like, it's not fine. You don't understand.
I remember when he was like a couple of weeks old, and I was meeting up with the girls from work at the opening, and it's typically quite quiet on an evening, so I was like, we'll go there because then if he does kick off, it's not as like stressy. And it was when he was going through like hardcore witching hour crying, and that's when we were going to the pub, and I was like, do I do this? And I was like, no, I'm going to do it because then he can scream, and I have to desensitize myself to be like, this is not an issue.
Yeah.
It feels like it's going on for an hour, but it's actually 10 minutes. And like one of the people that were in the pub were like, it's fine, I didn't even notice he was doing it. And I was like, I needed to hear that.
The pub was really loud.
Yeah,
as well. That's
exactly.
probably
It wasn't. The thing is, it was literally us and two other people, and I was like, oh my god, this is probably worse than if it was a busy pub. But actually after that, I was like, I'm so sorry. They're like, oh, we didn't even notice. Whether they were being polite or not, but I was like, I needed to hear that, and I've got through that like psychological thing of me panicking.
Yeah.
So now he's screaming in the pub, I'm like,
yeah.
do you want to look after him? If you've got a problem with it, you can look after him.
Yeah, I did actually see a really good quote the other day where it was like, you can choose to not have kids, but you can't live in a child-free society. Like, children exist, whether or not you can choose not to have them.
Yeah, it's the same on planes. Like, this is public transport that you're on. You don't, if you want to not have kids on a plane, get a private jet. Like, it's their right to be there as much as anything else. So that we've got that coming in May, we're going away, and that's, I am dreading the flight, but I'm like,
how long's the flight?
I think it's like 2 hours. It should be fine.
Yeah.
It's just that mental.
I was really nervous about it, to be honest, the first time we went with Buster, and it wasn't great timing. We did it at 9 months, and he was teething, just started to tease, so he got really poorly, which then made me poorly. The flight was like okay because they fell asleep. But one thing I did find with flying, completely going off tangent here, is that the flight attendants are really willing to help. And I have a really good mum friend who's a flight attendant, and she told me so many times, like, don't stress about it because they're there to help you.
Yeah.
Like, whatever you need, like, they will help you. So don't worry.
We'll see.
I'm sure we'll be fine.
You'll be fine,
You've
yeah.
got a chill baby.
Yeah.
You've got to do.
That's like
Do it
until
to-
we are on a flight, that's when I'll turn into a mate. No, it's fine. We'll deal with it. We'll deal with it. It's a phase.
Well, thank you so much to Emily
Thank
for
you.
coming in and being number 2
Thank
on the
you.
pod. I hope somebody out there found it useful.
Yes.
You know,
that's
a
why.
positive spin on not your preference.
Yes. I think probably we'll be getting a lot of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really what I wanted to do because I was looking at positive stories, but you know, like everyone's different. So the more that are out there, the better. And especially locally as well. It's gonna be a lot of local ones that can hear how it's gone in the different hospitals as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Bye. Now they're both asleep. Yes. Brilliant. Couldn't have slept through it though.
No. Oh, one at a time.